G'day guys, Clint Adams here, and I'm here with Kim Syrus from I guess originally known to me from the Garden Gurus, and In the Garden, and soon to be Outdoors Indoors. We're recording episode 22 of The Full Landscape. Hopefully this brings some value to any of you, your, I guess, landscapers out there that are budding media personalities. We drill into, I guess, how Kim got started and some tips and tricks for anyone that's looking to get into the media, as well as business in general. So hopefully you enjoy this one, and thank you for your attention.
Y'all ready to turn it up tonight?
Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
Obviously, there's the Kim that people know in the current media, but I guess I wanted to drill into your origin story. I've done a small amount of research, so I've got a little idea about how you got to where you are, but I think it would be good for our listeners and our watchers to understand, I guess, after school, what path you took to get to where you are today. If you can give us the kind of 3 to 5 minute spiel.
It wasn't a police file that you were checking out.
No.
That's okay.
I went onto your Facebook and I was like, "Who's he friends with?"
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to send a few messages out and just kind of.
Well, I suppose we can go way back to. I'm one of 5 boys.
Yep.
The oldest,
Yep.
and my father was a Lithuanian. Came out to Australia after the war, and Mum was English, and she was a teacher, and they met in Radium Hill. So I can say, look, I was conceived in Radium Hill and born in Broken Hill.
Okay, so Radium Hill's near Broken Hill?
Yeah, it is. It's on the South Australian border.
Yep.
Not many people know where Radium Hill is.
I've never heard of it.
But you have now.
Yeah, there you go.
That's good. So, you know, we learn something every day.
You're trying to expand the knowledge of
get that
other
brain
people.
going. And so, we moved back to the city, to Adelaide when I was very young, and my other brothers were brought up. So when we go back to the original roots, we were gardeners from an early age because we actually had to earn money. That was our pocket money. So the Syrus boys would take Dad's wheelbarrow and his shovels and spades and his rakes, and we would go out fixing up people's gardens for the little old ladies.
Yep. So knock on the door.
Knock on the door. Take the milk money if they went. No. No, we'd knock on the door and we would just get the gardening going. Yep. And so it sort of went on from there. And that became a good income on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Yep. And then I was an only high boy. Decided that I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So after high school, I went to teachers' college. Yep. So I spent 3 years studying teaching and about 7 years teaching primary school.
Okay, so you went into that and followed that path.
Yeah, and I suppose spent 6.5 years looking out the window more than the kids. No, I mean, look, I had a great time teaching. It was a good grounding. It was a good grounding for research and to present. And I also found that Teachers College was great for that. Plus a social side. Man, you can't do things without a social side. But I married very young, and I married Judy Ross, who was the son of Dean Ross from Ross Roses, and Dean was a great mentor in the rose industry, and he was actually the father of the heritage roses. He brought in a lot of the old-fashioned roses and really started that heritage rose movement back in the sort of late 70s and mid-80s.
Heritage roses being a brand?
No, heritage roses being old-fashioned roses.
Yep.
We're talking about the originals as opposed to the hybrid teas that we see now. Yep. So we're talking, things that were developed back in the 1700s and even way back to the 1400s. Yep. So there was a big movement back in the sort of, as I said, about the mid-80s to the late 80s. They were really big. Yep. People discovered afterwards that they only generally flowered once, and the modern gardener was really looking for, and the modern gardener was starting to look for things that flowered a lot more. So I decided that, he would sort of every Christmas and every time he got an opportunity to say to me, "You can't be a teacher all your life," and I went, "Well, I don't intend to be, but I'm not really sure what I want to do." Yep. And then Jude and I, my wife, we went overseas, and in '88, and we went to the south of France as part of. We took 6 months off our work, and
what was she doing at the time?
She's an occupational therapist.
Okay, so she was able to take 6 months off. You were able to take 6 months off.
Yeah. I just took some time off.
You would have been at
I don't know what the kids did for those 6 months. I have no idea. yeah, I was just thinking, I
Students,
could have just wandered out and go, see you later, see you in 6 months'
went
time.
to their country of choice and had a gap.
Yeah, had a gap year.
Half.
And part of our trip overseas was I went to an agents meeting, which was the French rose breeder, the Mayon family, and probably famous for the Peace Rose. And Dean was the Australian agent in Australia at the time
for that
particular breeder. And this is well beyond before plant breeders' rights.
Yep.
So it was all, people would send their roses over. You went through quarantine, you released it, and you showed a few of the guys and girls around. Said, "You want to grow these? Yeah, that sounds a good rose."
And that would happen.
And then everyone just budded each other's rose, and you pay a bit of a royalty. But it was called a gentleman's agreement. Yep. But I went to the Mayon agents meeting, and not only was it free food and drink, which I thought was absolutely fantastic.
Sounds like my kind of meeting.
Yeah, that was a sort of meeting, because I wasn't paying for it. We were paying for everything else. But I saw the beginning of the landscape roses.
Yep.
So the Madyland roses that you see, around Adelaide streetscapes.
Yep.
A lot of those roses really, their origins are from the south of France.
Yep.
And the Mayon family developed this range of ground covers, the Madylands, and it was just something I suppose tripped in my head and went, gee, I think I should be part of this.
Yep.
And so I came back, resigned from teaching, just like that. Went to I studied maths and science, and so I doubled my hours and halved my pay, and that's
not maths.
No, that's not maths. That's weird. Yeah. Anyway, so I started working at Ross Roses.
Yep.
And at that time, we had a massive weed problem because just climatically there was a whole lot of weeds, and we were trying to get rid of it. And I thought, well, I suppose I came back from an education background. I thought, well, look, I've got to do something and go and study. I've got to find out. So I found out there was a TAFE course that ran horticulture.
Yep.
So I rang them and said, look, do you do anything on weeds? And yes, they did a subject on weeds. I applied, and I didn't realise it was part of a certificate course. And I decided that, well, this is good. So I decided to go and do my apprenticeship.
So you did like a weeds module, but then it kind of expanded.
And I thought, well, now I realised there was a lot more.
And so the apprenticeship was in horticulture?
In horticulture,
and was that, back then it was still like a cert 3, cert 4?
Yeah, cert 3. And then cert 4, so advanced diploma, advanced, and then just kept going. And then they asked me whether I wanted to do some lecturing.
I guess if you came from a teaching background, so you kind of being a student didn't come as a difficult thing to you?
No.
Okay.
And in some ways it was easier when they asked me, do you want to do some lecturing? And I said, yeah, I'll do that at night. Well, all our study was at night.
Yep.
There's a lot of that. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was good.
Yep.
But at the same time, I was sort of moving on in my business and the direction I wanted to go. And then my father-in-law passed away, Dean, at 63 years of age, which is young, super young. And I think I was at that crossroads. So our life brings you lots of crossroads. Everybody's got crossroads. And I thought at that stage, okay, do I want to stay in horticulture? Do I want to go somewhere else? Do I want to do physiotherapy, for example, or do something else?
Because it was in your...
in our sort of circle of friends as well as that. But I thought, no, I'll stay in horticulture, and I started a wholesale business, which was corporate roses. And the Mayon breeders approached me and said, can you be our agent? I said,
so you maintained a relationship with them after France?
Yeah.
Did you bring anything straight over from there, or you kind of, it was just the start of the dialogue?
We kept going through that sort of stuff. So then they approached, wanted to know whether I'd be their agent, and I said, I'll happy to be your agent in Australia. Yep. And so our relationship started 20 odd years ago,
and that still exists today.
That still exists today, and it got stronger and stronger. And part of what we were doing, we were introducing new roses, but also at the beginning, really at the start of the charity roses. So we worked with I suppose RSPCA with their best friend rose.
So for people that don't understand what that means, and I'm one of them, I think I know where you're going. So that's a special rose that's been bred, so it's got a colour or a style.
Yeah. And what we tend to do is when I go to France, I'll go with the shopping list, and I'll go over about once every 2 or 3 years, and I'll say, okay, we need a red rose, really good red or climber or something like that, and I go out in the fields, and you are literally looking at thousands of plants that are unreleased, and you go through and you start choosing. Yeah, it's mind bending when you see how much. I mean,
how big are we talking? Like acres and acres.
Acres and acres.
Yeah.
You know, each year when they're doing their crossings, that is, you know, they're planting seeds.
Yep.
They plant about 150,000 seeds a year of new, and these are new roses.
Yep.
And then over about a 4 or 5 year period, they cull those.
Yep.
And then only of the 150,000, you might be left with about 3,000 that they think are top notch.
Still a lot, isn't it?
That's a lot. They plant them out, and that's every year.
Yeah.
And so once a year they have an agents meeting with all the rose agents, like, you know, from around the world, like myself. But because of the distance and everything else,
yep.
we only go twice, 2 or 3 times. You know, once every 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And you get to choose, you know, things for your country. So we bring them back, and these are unreleased. And there might be some pink rose, for example, and you go, well, how many pink roses are there? I mean, literally hundreds of pink roses. So one way or another, we contact charities, or they contact us and say, look, we're really looking at having a rose. Do you do naming rose? And hence you get to a relationship with the charity, and for a period of time, every time that rose is sold through a garden centre, there's a percentage of that money goes back to the charity, and it after about 3 years, it then becomes more of a promoter of the charity, and all of that's on the label and stuff like that. So we had some really good moments. You know, I spent time with Fiona Coote, the hearts. You know, she had two heart replacements, and you know, famous Australian like that. So Don Bradman, we never got to meet, but we released the Don Bradman rose. He gave his approval for that. Yeah, so we've had some great some great times with those new roses, and we're still looking at other organisations as well. But having seen all that, you go through, and it happens to be that crossed over with the media opportunity. I was out.
So how did that come up?
Well, I mean, a lot of people say to me, "How do you get into the media?" And I go, well.
There's a better question: is do you want to get into the media?
Do you want to get in the media? Yeah, that's a great one. Great one, Clint. Yes. Sometimes it finds you, and you have to You have to decide whether it's something you want to do, because it's hard work.
Well, and you're putting yourself in the public eye as well.
And you've got to be careful about what you do. And you've got to change your name. No,
you need a clean sheet.
Clean sheet. Yeah, change your name a couple of times. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
I said you got a guy for that now.
I do.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll get the details later.
Yeah. I was at one of the rose festivals in the Botanic Gardens, probably in the sort of early 90s, and happened to be out the front of our corporate roses tent with, you know, all these new roses, and I'm just spruiking along, talking to people, and you know, bringing them in, explaining it, and then just got tapped on the shoulder by a lady who said, I'm the producer for a TV show on Channel 7 called AM Adelaide, and it's a morning TV, and
I even remember that.
Yeah, we're looking for a gardener. Can you come in, do a segment, 15 minutes, you know, every fortnight? And I went, yeah, sure, no problems.
So you said yes. It sounds like that's a bit of a recurring theme.
Yeah.
You kind of get presented with opportunities and you actually look at them. You don't just go, I'm a teacher. Yeah. I'm just going to be a teacher forever.
Yeah. But I also, I'm a great believer that you have to have a good background and a solid background in what you do
before you
really start doing it. And that's just me. I mean, I can see, you know, some people wing it and they do really well. It's dangerous. But it does. You get unravelled. So being a qualified horticulturalist puts you in a position where you can say I'm a horticulturalist, and it's amazing how that opens doors. Yeah. So I did the AM Adelaide. So there was Jan Beasley and Cheryl Lee Harris, and then Ann Wills, fantastic.
I was going to say Ann Wills.
Yeah, Ann Wills. We had a great time, and then that finished. And I thought, well, that's it. You know, sometimes you just have to learn to walk away.
You ride the wave while it's there.
Yeah, and at that point, I thought, well, I'm back to the nursery, and whilst I was still doing all the nursery work, it just means that you add a little bit on. And then a mate of mine who was a rose grower in Perth started with another guy a TV show called The Garden Gurus. Yep,
which is where I first saw you.
Yeah, and they originally a West Australian production company, and only produced The Garden Gurus in Western Australia. So and then they moved to South Australia, and Mike Keelan did the first series. Yep. But his out of the blue commitments were starting to really take off. Because
they were travelling with that as well.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. And so I got a phone call from my mate Neville Passmore, who used to be on Gardening Australia. Yep. So he rang and said, look, gave me an opportunity. He said, look, I'll catch up for lunch. Can you do one story a week on the program? Well, by the time we finished lunch and I got home, he'd rung me twice and said, oh, by the way, could you do 3 stories a week? Now, Clint, I suppose now this is probably the biggest thing where you go, yep, no problems, and not really understanding.
Work it out later,
That was the thing, not understanding exactly what that meant. And what that actually meant was you had to write scripts and everything had to be scripted. So I go back, that takes me all the way back to my early teaching days where you had to do lesson plans, and you present that to the, in my first year, for the first term, you actually had to put your lesson plan on the
So you just went in muscle memory, like it was easy, like not easy, you still had to do the work, but you were familiar with, you were just writing a lesson plan for media. Yeah,
so you did that. But the day before our first filming, the producer, Graham Peach, who has been in media for, I don't know, since it was invented. He goes back a long way. Fantastic guy, but tough. And in some respects, I didn't find that a problem. But he turned up with a handy cam and he basically put it up and said to me, right, we're going to just, before we start filming tomorrow, I just want to see how you're going with that script. And he put it up, and I sort of got halfway through the presentation, and I could just see him turn it off and stand there, shake his head, and he said, come here. And I said, we're going to go inside. And he laid it down, and I said, well, and I remember him sitting next to me and saying to me, okay, how long is this script? And I said, well, it's about, and he went, no, about. Yeah. How long is it? And I said, well, I think. He said, don't think.
You're about to get slapped.
Yeah, I know. I was actually cowering at that stage. He said, when we come back tomorrow, that script will be 150 seconds, which is,
the segment.
Which is that particular part for the segment. And then there was another which was 2.5 minutes. And he said, and you will know everything line by line, and you will do this. And I accepted that because...
well, you'd said yes already, hadn't you?
I said yes. And so I said about that. And... I think the thing is, I think from a presenter's perspective, for the first couple of years, you've got butterflies in your stomach.
I don't know every time. Does that ever go away? I still get nervous. I mean, it becomes easier.
It changes, and it does. And I can't tell you the time that it does change. Yeah. But when you actually have to stand in front of a camera and you don't have the butterflies in your stomach, you know that. Well, it can be dangerous because you're thinking you're being overconfident, but in most cases it just means that you've had that experience and it doesn't really it doesn't sort of irk you. But so I did the Garden Gurus for 3-4 years before.
So that, how long ago was that? Like 7 years ago?
Well, I did them for about nearly 10 years. No shit. Yeah, nearly 10 years, and in between they were doing some overseas story with Explore. So they had those. Now they had other presenters doing it.
I saw an Explore thing on YouTube. That would have been 7 years ago. That's where I was getting that from.
And I did Explores for about 5 years. So I did Garden Gurus 5 years before that, and then we were doing Garden Gurus and Explore, and that took us to some amazing places. And originally they were there. The Explore programs were garden oriented, and then by the time I joined it, it was really experiential travel. So we got to swim with beluga whales in Canada, and like things where you pinch, things where if you ring back the family and you say, guess what I'm doing today, and they go, we don't care, you know you've really hit it.
I get that. I'm starting to get a taste of some travel, and my wife's just like, so am I ever going on one of these trips? I'm like, it's business. You don't own any businesses, so no, you're not going on the trip. But
and
I'm assuming that it wasn't
so
always.
You're a brave man.
I've got a very understanding wife. She's a good one. I'm going to keep this one.
I think so.
So, I guess, does it ever become a job though? Like that sound like traveling the world, and does it still? All right, we've got to get up, got to get ready, got to do this.
The thing was when it starts to hit home when you're in the Yukon, way up the north of Canada, and at about 12:30, everyone's going, "Hey, let's go and look at the Northern Lights." And I'm answering Mrs. Jones's email because she was 2 roses short in her order.
Oh, so you're still running corporate roses?
And I'm still running
corporate roses. And still today you're running corporate roses?
Yeah, I've scaled that way
Under
back.
management?
Yeah, no, I've scaled that way back. Yep, so that is so at that time we had that. I had the Fleurieu Garden Centre rolling along and doing all that, and that was pretty crazy.
And was your wife still working, or did it get to a point where
no, she's still working.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it was, and we had 2 kids, and so it's, I think that was probably about 5 years ago, was that maybe 6 years ago, there was that moment I went, what the hell is this going on?
How old were your kids then?
They would have been in their late teens.
Okay, so they're kind of self-managed, but you still have you're
you
still
have to do
responsible.
that,
Well, you're always responsible.
Yeah.
I ask out of, I guess, personal interest because I've got a 5 and 2 2s. That's big. And my wife works as well, so and you start stacking more and more and more and more, and you don't want to let that. I mean, obviously, teenagers may want less to do with you than a 2-year-old, say. So,
but you still have to spend the time. I mean, I still, even through all the other bits and pieces, when my son particularly was at primary school, I mean, I still coached the cricket and the football, and that was a hell of a job to try and get down to down to the school by 4 o'clock, from the nursery at Maiponga, in the middle of winter to do that. So it's.
And you were living in the city, well,
we're just in one of the inner suburbs.
Yep.
So
and you can't really have a large scale nursery in a city suburb. So,
and I was discovering pretty well that if you can't be a full time grower, you can't be a grower. And when we first started Corporate Roses, we started from the ground up. The usual thing, you go to the bank, ask for a loan, they look at you, laugh, they say, well, what equity have you got in your house? And we were lucky that we had
because you had proper jobs, if you want to call it that. Which is, it sounds funny saying it now, but
so when we so we had to use the equity in our home to buy the property at Maiponga to start the business, and it was a journey. So for 20 odd years we were working and building it up. And we had sort of ups and downs, like every business. A cash flow,
seasonal business,
cash flow. I think sometimes 3 or 4 months was not out of the question to get paid.
Oh man, I can't stand that.
And talking to other people, I mean, I had mates who were accountants and everyone else, and they'd be going, that's ridiculous. Waiting 6 months or 4 months or what to get paid, and you go. You shrug your shoulders and think, well, you turn people upside down and then nothing comes out. What else can you do?
It's similar. I guess it's the only worst industry I can think of is the grape growing industry, where the growers give their grapes to the winemakers, and the winemakers pay them when they want to, or once it's sold or whatever. It's so bad. I mean, obviously we run an account business here, but I think it's becoming stricter and stricter, and I mean, we probably put ourselves in a position where we can demand how we want it done, so that you've got your 30 days, and if you don't pay, then we can't continue dealing with you. But if you're growing roses and you've only got 6 or 8 really key clients, and they've all been used to running these certain account terms for so long, how do you remap the minds of a 50-year-old nursery, or I don't know, whatever that.
It's hard because it's a perishable item. I mean, all of a sudden people can say,
I don't want them.
You don't want them. No, and I've heard horror. I mean, I've got plenty of mates in the industry who tell me horror stories. Of tens of thousands of dollars of their plants just not even being paid for, but sitting in boxes, and then somebody turns around and goes, no, and then they say they're dead, and then got sent back.
Of course
and
they're dead.
Of course they did. So then you have the ugly reality of having to go through the pursue it, and when there's no money at the other end, it's tough. And our industry, and I think going back to the drought, which was that 07, 07, 08 was really the start for the tough part of our industry.
Well, Waterpro started in like that January of 09. So we kind of just come off the back of that, but there were still water restrictions. I remember the heavy requirement for drip tube, and there was no sprinklers for lawns, and odds and even days and all that kind of thing. So it was a pretty
it's a tough
dark time for a lot of people.
I think what I mean, from a horticultural perspective, what upset me the most was all the years and knowledge. I mean, there would have been thousands of years of knowledge, of combined knowledge, of people who had to leave our industry, the nursery industry, because the garden centres, the small little garden centres that were sort of the lifeblood, for corporate roses particularly. When we started, we didn't necessarily want to deal with the big people. We were actually more interested in looking after the smaller garden centres.
Like a boutique,
that don't necessarily want 500 iceberg roses. Great when we got those orders, but we're saying, look, can we have 15 or 25? Because that fitted in. So I think when we first started, we had somewhere around about 350 garden centres on our books. Maybe more, actually, 450 garden centres on our books. When I closed the growing side about 4.5 years ago, we ended up with about 40.
So when you say close the growing side, what do you run? How does that business look now?
So Corporate Roses now is the gates are closed, and behind the gates it looks a bit ugly. We're trying to keep. I've got a guy who looks after it just to maintain it. Essentially, what Corporate Roses now is an introducer of new rose varieties onto the Australian market.
So they'll come and take that much. And then grow them out. I
license growers.
Yep.
So that, as we've done for 20 odd years, we have our licensing arrangements with about 40-50 growers around Australia.
Yep.
As I said before, go over to France, have a look at the new varieties, organise the quarantine. We have our own quarantine nursery on the property.
Yep.
And then I'll just plant out, assess, and then when I get to a stage where I'm happy with a rose, I'll actually send trial budwood out to a few growers, them to have a look at,
yep.
and if they go, yeah, this is a cracker,
yep.
then I'll go, right, that's our new release for 2 years' time,
yep.
or there. So I just map out our releases, and then I keep the next phase of plants
and that
coming
just comes
through.
From experience.
Yeah, it does, but it's also a matter of we've been doing it for so long, but also now that we don't have the growing side to it, it takes the pressure off me, because that media side changed when I finished doing the Explore programs, because they then moved into a garden, moved away from gardening oriented things, but more into cooking.
Yep.
And so they brought chefs in, and that after 5 years of doing overseas stuff, I was actually quite happy.
Yeah.
And then I approached back in 2014. I approached Channel 9 here to say, well, what about a local garden show?
Yep.
And I had the concept of in the garden.
Yep.
And they get pictures all the time. And Sean O'Brien, who's the general manager, said to me, well, look, we've had 4 pictures this week, and yours is the best by far.
Yeah.
Yep, and we'll give you the time slot. And so In the Garden started, and we ran that. Now, the interesting thing about they give you the time slot, networks, that's how TV's made now. They will give you the time slot, but that's it. So there's no financial.
You're the production company.
We're the production company.
And there's no money.
There's no money. So you work your by incorporating sponsors and incorporating the financial backers to your program into the program, so that it makes it look like the art is to make it look interesting and informative, but not like an advert. And
it's got to be a challenge.
And even the word advertorial is really almost cutting it too.
Yep.
So when we talk to we talk to different groups. I mean, Mitre 10 have been a great supporter right from the word go.
Yep.
And it's local TV. We do get replayed nationally, so we do sort of touch on that. But the nice thing about it is, as like with this podcast, this is going to be used in a whole lot of different ways.
Yeah.
The same with our programs. So every episode that gets recorded and is given to the sponsor, we know it's going to be used in a whole
Mitre 10 will put it on their Facebook put it on their
page.
YouTube.
Yeah, and everything has to be sort of almost done in its entirety. And going back to the educational side, the one thing I want to have in every story, apart from being it interesting and entertaining, is that somebody goes, wow, I didn't know that. So for me, when people say to me, gee, I really love that program because it gives us loads of information, that just ticks the box. Because what we generally find, certainly in TV, is that if you're informative and entertaining, you've got longevity. If you're there just for like the wow factor,
or whatever the current trend is,
and the trends, it disappears. And we're lucky in the regards to the way we are in Adelaide, because we sort of are very strong supporters of local production, which is great. And same in Perth. And it's the way the program comes together. So we went from a garden show in the garden, but I could see that the funding side of things for gardening was starting to go down, and we couldn't support a garden show. So I'd already been thinking about turning it into more of a lifestyle show. It gave us an opportunity also to introduce a whole range of presenters, and female presenters, because in the garden it was just me, apart from whoever we interviewed. So we set about changing the name to Outdoors Indoors, and that was probably a hard moment when I went into August 2000 and 17, going into Channel 9, going, oh, by the way,
we're changing it.
After they said, we love your show, it's great, and went, yeah, sort of, pulling the collar, going, a bit of bead of sweat coming down, thinking, yeah, I know, but it's okay if we change it to a lifestyle show and call it Outdoors Indoors? And that's always a big thing. And they went, there was a moment and went, yeah, sounds great, let's do it.
I think that's important, and that's probably something, I guess, a good little tip for all business people is to try and create the competition that knocks you out yourself. And you did that. Otherwise it was going to be someone else that was going to come in and pitch it and go, gardening's flailing or not, we've got this pitch, and then all of a sudden you might lose your time slot to someone else. So.
And time slot, I mean, we have 4:30 on a Sunday, and that's gold. I mean, that's, if somebody said to me, would you like 5 o'clock? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic, but you take what you not necessarily take what you're given, but what you feel as though you're capable of doing,
and what's right for the time slot as well.
And also when you do your time slots, I mean, we've done some 7:30 Friday night programs, 1 hour shows, and you've got to change up the style that you do. It's got to be it's got to be faster paced. It's got to there's got to be something. There are changes to it that you've got to produce.
So you just had to learn this, like obviously the media side. Like I'm quite interested in how that all comes together. Like you go pitch a show to someone and they say yes, that's it. That's their bit done. You now need to produce them a file that they can play.
Well, you give them a disc
every week.
Yeah, every week,
and that needs to be there with enough time for them to review it.
Or
whatever.
About a week and a half, 2 weeks beforehand.
And you need to find like post production, so editors, a film crew. Are they guys and girls, humans? I say guys, I mean both. That are available that you have as like a crew, or do you subcontract? What I do now, I
subcontract out all the production side to TAV Productions, and they're based in Stepney, and they provide me with the crew and everything else. So we just have a business relationship. Outdoors Indoors is still my program, and I produce it myself. So I'm the producer. So when I'm not in front of the camera, I'm behind the camera. And I think that's something which you've got to become leaner and smarter and multitask. And I think it's sort of, it's the same with the landscape industry. It'd be great where you had somebody who just look, I'm the barrow person. All I do is barrowing. No, I do this, and I'm a designer. Sometimes everyone's got to roll their sleeves up and to make it happen.
Yeah, that's a good example, especially landscaping, because it's such a diverse trade, I guess.
And same with TV. I mean, TV is such an interesting media that you just go, I mean, now I watch TV and I sometimes can't watch it to enjoy it,
because you're analysing the way it's
you analyse it, and I can tell lazy TV. The more interest you can add to a program, and that could be with additional footage, change of camera angles and everything else. It's all about the viewer. I think at the end of it's a bit like saying the client. For me, the client is the viewer as well as the sponsor, making sure that we've sort of ticked the brief for them, and that they're happy with everything. And we actually encourage them to come on on location with us. We always work on scripts, so things don't sort of appear out of accident. So for me, it's
like our stuff. Everything's an accident.
Are you joking? I mean, I'm just reading off the auto cue, Clint, behind you. I mean, I don't think I remember saying that, but anyway.
Imagine me trying to do a 150-second clip. Like, nah. So I'm sure I could learn it, but
I think you can.
This is great, thanks. So that's another great tip, and I think that's good for anyone that's producing content in any form, that it's not for you, it's for your audience. And I'm conscious of it all the time with this, and we might not always deliver, but I'm trying to, like, the questions I'm asking are like, how does this look? Because there might be someone that wants to produce a TV show, obviously not in your time slot, because that's your time slot. And
thank you very much.
We don't want to have to.
I mean,
throw
that's
right.
Down, throw me under the bus. Thank you very much. I think it's great. I think the more that we encourage people who have got good backgrounds. So I mean, from a landscape perspective, there are other opportunities to get on TV. But it's also not just TV. There are podcasts, and I mean, there are so many other web-based opportunities that get you to a mass market, and that you can do at a much more competitive cost. I think once you go to TV, your cost center increases, because you just have to have the high end.
There's a level of production.
There's a level of production that you can get away with putting something on the web that you go, well, somebody's viewing it on a screen. Whereas once we get into the 4K stuff, that and everything has to be properly. Probably audioed. Now, I think one thing for anyone who's thinking about doing something and throwing themselves in front of a camera or an iPhone is your audio. I mean, it's just the biggest downfall. So
people can tolerate grainy film, but
and gone are the days even when people, we all want to Google something. I mean, 2 weeks ago, went away with two of my brothers over to the York Peninsula. This is on the side. One of the brothers' mates lives at Hardwick Bay. We went out in the boat. We caught this massive 20-odd kilo tuna. So the first thing you do, you Google how to fillet a tuna. So I mean, and there were a couple of options. So we went for the one which had the great audio and obviously good vision too. So gone are the days where people are quite happy to pick up something which is a bit odd or dodgy, or you can barely hear them. The audio is probably the one thing that lets people down. So if you just research, look at sort of mics that can either plug into something or you go wireless.
I think Rode have like mics that you can plug into your phone, don't they? Yeah. So. For people that are trying to produce content on a budget, you can do that with a phone and that mic, and just have a lapel mic. So
and I mean, and the great thing about doing that stuff is do stuff first, look at yourself, and then come back, because I still critique myself. I do man, too. What the hell was I doing? I mean, I think I was looking at a bird at one stage, or. The hardest thing, I think, for anyone is when there's an interview, and particularly where there's...
Because you don't know what's coming.
And also, well, you don't know what's coming. Well, although in some of the interviews, it's always good, before you interview somebody, is to go through the questions, and particularly you say to them, ask them, look, give me some questions you'd like me to ask. I mean, like we're doing today, the easiest thing for get somebody to talk about is themselves.
Well, that's what this podcast is predominantly. So that it gives our audience, I guess, an understanding of these kind of like, not this is your life, but this is someone that's in your market and how they got to where they are, and the tips and tricks that they might have for you. And I think and
being the other is that when somebody else is talking, it's really important that if you're interviewing somebody, you actually have to look interested, but don't look like you're catching flies. And often you'll see somebody and they've got their mouth open and they're just going, what are they doing? And the other, I mean, Talladega Nights, I reckon, is one of the great movies with the legend of Ricky Bobby. And the beginning is, what do I do with my hands? They sort of come up. And it is classic. Everyone says to me often, they're going, what do I do with my hands? And I go, I just leave them up here.
What do you normally do with your hands?
You put them in a pocket, put them behind yourself, and you can do that sort of stuff, but whatever feels comfortable. But whenever we interview anyone, it's just the usual thing about saying, relax, take a couple of deep breaths, and I get people to actually lift their shoulders up to their ears and just take that tension out of their neck. And it's and it also helps open up the larynx a bit too. So that their diaphragm's sort of relaxed and they sound nice.
It's I guess that's one of the advantages of producing our own content, is that we don't charge for it. We don't have sponsorship. Kim's like,
I'll just leave that money there. A bonus.
And we're not really accountable to any media outlet. So whatever we choose to produce, we choose to produce. And there's no time limits, and there's no. I mean, my language is improving.
I've noticed.
If you watch any of my earlier podcasts,
I have.
And that's. To try and, I guess, ensure that if our podcast is playing in front of children, that it's not.
I'm sure. Well, this one can. The kids would have been asleep about half an hour ago, which is great.
That's it.
Actually, this could be like insomnia.
Just to watch.
From listening to me.
Put them to sleep.
But look, with TV and with getting into the media, it's about almost being in the right place at the right time. Sometimes it happens, and the hardest thing, and I've seen it with people who really want to get into it, they're just hungry.
But too much.
They're too hungry, and you're thinking it's a really interesting industry, but it's nice to know I've got something else behind me, because I feel sorry for somebody who that's their entire
like
sphere.
If they're a newsreader and they just got dropped from Channel X.
Yep.
They don't have another job.
What else do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at people like that, Carl Stefanovic and stuff like that. Well, these guys can go into something else.
He'll find work all the time,
plenty of work. But if you're a reporter, with a local channel, and they say, well, actually, by the way, where do you go? Look, if you've got a journalistic background, then you can look for other opportunities. But I think the reality TV people are the ones that I always look at. And
when that becomes their actual reality is that they're a TV star now, not a plumber that happened to go on the block and become.
Well, when you see the title of going reality TV star, you go, wow. And that moment of fame, I think really you have to have that moment where you go, now I've got to let that go.
You have to be prepared for it to die every day.
And it will. Every it's a bright light, and I've seen sort of some of those reality TV shows when they've been produced, and everybody's hanging around, like everybody's being faded on, and it's great. As soon as it's disappeared, there's a big vacuum, and it's the strong ones that can actually go, well, look, I'm getting back to my life, and I realised that it was a bit of fun, or maybe they said it was the biggest mistake of my life, or wow, I didn't realise this was going to be so intrusive. Being in front of the camera is not the be all and end all. And in some ways, I'm almost transitioning. I can see myself transitioning from being in front of the camera all the time to spending that time behind the camera.
You enjoy that?
Oh, look, I enjoy it as much as I do in front of the camera. And being able to know that, when you're running a business, like it's a business, you turn around and you go, your budgets, what else you can possibly do. But it's nice to know at the end of it, you go, I've produced a really good product, and I've got somebody else who's coming up, up and coming. I mean, we've got,
you're kind of paying it forward in a way.
Yeah, and we've got fantastic presenters. Jackie Dunn, who's on Outdoors Indoors. She's an interior designer. Alessandra Lee is a nutritionalist, and they've got Simone Annan, and she's a medical scientist. She's a medical scientist. And then Dr. Derek McNair, who's just up the road, is the vet.
And these people came into your peripheral, or you sort them out? Or?
It's interesting because that's a really I spoke to Lisa McCaskill because she runs a presenting. So if you're looking for somebody who wants to polish up their presenting skills or even know where to start, she runs a program. And so
more than not just a public speaking program, but an actual genuine presenting
program. And we'll give you that. So I bumped into her and I said, look, explain what I was doing. We were opening up the scope for something else. I was looking for the balance of the gender balance. And she said, look, I've got Jackie here, and I'll send you her tape. So she emailed it through. She emailed me a couple of people, and the one thing that sort of set me aside, there was one person, and that was this is their demo tape, and the first thing they started doing was umming and ahhing, and I went, wow, if that's your demo tape and you're umming and ahhing,
that's pretty bad, because you've got full control over your demo tape.
Yes.
You just don't give it to someone.
No, you go, can we do that again? Anyway, so that person, and there was a couple there, but when, say, Jackie came up there, I always look at people's eyes, because the eyes are the things that tell you how confident. Clint, you're Mr. Poet.
We should do lunch after this.
The whole hands across the desk. But I that was probably the thing that there was confidence, showed the confidence, but the confidence does come out in your eyes, and so if you are like a deer in the headlights, it shows. Alessandra had actually done a little bit of intern work with us, and I purposely ask the universities whether they've got people that they're always looking. They've got to do some 80 hours of internship, and I love it when the students come along. They get to hold the clipboard. They also get to be involved. They're part of the crew, and at the end of the first day, they all go, "How the hell do you do this?" Because there's not much TV. Everybody, all they do. Well, not all they do, but they do learn how to make movies. But there aren't that many movies around in Adelaide, so they
we might have one a decade that pops, don't we?
So this is the type of TV that is not common either, but it gives them another opportunity.
So it's sustainable. They could actually have a job and stay in Adelaide.
So if they wanted to do that, and so Ali had been part of that, and she'd done we'd actually had her in front of the camera, because when you're an intern, you're often an extra. We need somebody to stand over there, or we need somebody to hear, or could you be something pulling something off a shelf? And then Simone was, in fact, TAV said to me, "Oh, look, Simone had done a little bit of work. She's an actress anyway. She's done a whole lot of other things, and she fitted in really, really well.
Yep.
And then Derek, who'd been with us within the garden, because I always wanted to put pets in there as well, because so Derek had already been part of
their
us.
animals,
they love it, and it's all about responsible pet ownership. So it was great to have that, and then we sort of still widened the circle out where we've got you're still interviewing people, and you try and get the best out of them. I mean, sometimes we have challenges, massive challenges.
Well, they're human beings.
Yeah.
So it's normal, isn't it?
But the good thing is, I always say, as you're going to do here, you always edit.
You've got your final cut, I mean, we don't edit too bad.
The podcast we leave pretty...
Yeah, it's more if someone says something.
Really?
Yeah, like if afterwards, if you just go, you know what, I really shouldn't have said that. It's not what I meant, or that could be taken out of context. We can cut it out, but I guess that's the beauty of the platform.
And the nice thing about this is it's so relaxed.
Yeah,
I mean,
and there's no time frame. Like if we've had Tim Harper was 2 hours and.
Oh, Tim, and he probably
know Tim, don't you?
Yeah, and he probably built. And
he bought me a plant. There was a plant there for a while.
And there's probably a vertical wall. He turned around.
Yeah. Well, he did that wall out there.
Well, I was just looking at it.
Yeah.
Well done, Tim.
Yeah, because the last wall we had, we weren't looking after it, and it was really bad. I really liked that. When he planted it, I was like, I don't know, like the plant selection didn't make sense.
Good. Yeah, that's
good. But now it's so full. We should probably get some footage and cut that in actually later on, DK, because we have a few people ask about that.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I came across when I was doing a bit of research, that you're involved with some associations, and the Horticultural Media Association is something that you're involved in.
Yeah.
Is that something you've been with for a while, or?
Well, I think I went to about 3 meetings, and then I ended up as president.
Okay.
And I was president for about 8 years.
Is that because you like being the boss?
No, I think when people say step forward and everyone steps back.
And you're looking forward, expecting all these people.
And I was looking at a fly on the wall, going, no.
You're distracted.
Well, look, I don't mind being the boss, and I think that's I think you have to be in if you run a business and you're doing that sort of stuff. It doesn't faze me. But I was president for nearly 8 years now. Karen Montgomery's president, and that was long enough. It was time to do that. And during that time, we have every 2 years there are awards called the Horticultural Media Association Laurels for best book or best TV and stuff like that. And it was run in South Australia for about 3 years, 6 years. And I was on that sort of committee. That was a lot of hard work. There was June Taylor from ex-producer at 5AA with Mike Keelan, and myself, who literally ran that. And I couldn't tell you how many hours we spent getting all that organised.
That was a state association.
That was a national. That was a national. The horticultural media. So we ran it. So all the hort media people from around Australia would come to Adelaide once every 2 years, and for it's basically the awards night.
And it was always in Adelaide.
It was in Adelaide, and then we moved it on. It was Sydney, and now it's in Melbourne, and it coincides with the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show,
which I'm guessing you'll be over there for.
Yeah, I go over there every year with the stand up with the Rose people.
We've got a contingent. I say contingent because I think there's nearly 20 of us going.
Oh, fantastic!
I've put together a bit of a crew of people, and we're going to hire a bus when we get there, and so we'll be doing the Flower and Garden Show. Hoping to do the landscape, the Thursday night, the Landscape Association, or the Victorian Landscape Association, have a cocktail event. So we'll be at that. So it's really good for Adelaide to be able to go over, the Adelaide landscapers to be able to go over there and kind of, I guess, network with the Victorian counterparts, and then see the kind of work that's being done.
Yeah, it's cutting edge stuff
with some higher budget, or equal budget, but more common, a higher volume of those budget jobs getting done. So and so what is the horticulture, obviously we're involved with the Landscape Association, so I understand what the purpose of that is.
The Hort Media Association is basically an organisation which encompasses anybody who is involved in getting the message of horticulture out to the wider community. And it's TV, it's radio, it's print, it's presenting, it's in a whole lot of different forms.
So even a business like Jeffrey's or Garden Grove, or they could be involved because they're actually an ambassador to that market.
Peter Waterpro is involved. So
he loves a good association, doesn't he?
He loves it. He loves it. You can't keep him away, which we don't want to, because he's such a great great asset to the industry. But yeah, from South Australia's perspective, we have a slightly maybe different view to the other states in how membership is sort of for hort meter. Yeah, we actually say, well, look, I mean, when I was president, I'd say, look, if you've got a pulse, you can be a member. And I said that's not even compulsory.
Yep.
So,
as long as you're paying your fees.
If you're paying your fees and you're in there, and we find that the wide diversity in membership actually adds to our. Like if we were all just TV people or radio people, what else are we going to be talking about? We can get a guest speaker, and we do have guest speakers coming in. But when you're sitting at a table, you've got people who are ex-research scientists, or or somebody who's just written a book, or somebody who's released a new product, and you go, wow, this is.
Just a different perspective.
This is great, rather than just talking about the one particular, one particular thing. But the good thing about the hort media is that if there is something like the drought, the beginning of the drought, that millennium drought, we all got together. We actually had a meeting at Cafe Paparazzi. I still remember organising that, and all the main heads of media got together, and we all just wanted to make sure we got the same response. Message. The same message got out to everybody, and primarily it did, and it was a really good way of getting people to sort of not panic about losing a garden. There are ways of gardening.
It was about management rather than fear.
And it was it was related to your industry, getting that
Very
water,
much.
getting
I've
the
been
water
to
to
a few
plant.
meetings a long time ago. Would have been 12 years ago, I reckon, when they were at the Maid.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I went to a couple of meetings, and I guess I was probably too young to be really getting too heavily involved, and I was an employee at the time as well. So I'd only seen a meeting in a meeting, so I wasn't really sure, like, if there was a main goal, or if it was really just about making sure that.
I mean, we part of it. I mean, we ran a seminar last year where we were prior to the election of trying to understand where where Adelaide is going in terms of its greening and its long term, and so that's still on the back. Well, it's on the back.
So there'd
burner.
be lobbying.
There's still some lobbying with Urbro TAFE, for example, at the moment.
That's probably the biggest issue at the moment, isn't it?
Well, we've managed through the Hort Media. Managed meetings with a number of key ministers to understand where it's going, and a recent meeting with a horticultural coalition group, which represents 25 odd different growers from growing groups, getting together just to understand what we can do.
Because we sponsor the South Australian Golf Course Superintendents Association, so we're regularly at those meetings, and then obviously we're a sponsor of the Master Landscapers Association. And that the TAFE thing comes up in those two associations because, well, a large majority of the, I guess, the employees that are entering the workforce as apprentices come through the TAFE system, and if that certificate that I think the horticulture certificate was going to get reduced, or the turf, they don't have any staff.
No,
and then all of a sudden there's a skills shortage somewhere, and then that's going to force up the price of those skills, or you're going to lose the skills.
Or wherever you get a vacuum, you always get things get sucked into it, but it's what gets sucked in. So you want to make sure that the skill level is really important. I mean I went through the TAFE system, and I'm a great advocate for if you want to be qualified. And your qualifications come at different levels too. I mean, you've got somebody who might have done, say, a Cert 2, but they have they've really researched a certain area, and they become whether it's on a piece of paper or they've done it off their own bat, and they've really understood whether it's, I don't know, it could be automatic timers, and that they've just gone through for the whole range, and they know the ins and outs of everything. They're the go-to person. I mean, and they're gold. To have those sort of people on your staff, or at least somebody you can make a phone call to.
Yes, it's I guess it's an under-acknowledged education platform, because of the large percentage, especially our market. I mean, anyone wants to get into landscaping, I mean, that horticulture certificate's kind of the minimum.
Yes. And
really, there's not a lot more.
No.
Unless you're doing an apprenticeship in a specific trade like carpentry or or landscaping now. I guess if you were to look back, would you change, I guess, any part of the journey so far? Like, do you regret being a teacher for as long as you were, or you wouldn't?
No, I think life's about making. You make the decision at the time, and you can't reinvent history.
Yep.
And I've thought about that. It's not a question that hasn't come across my mind.
Yep.
But I do believe that, yeah, sure, I've made mistakes. Everyone has. But I think the most important thing is actually understanding the mistake that you made. Yep. And changing the direction of where you go. So I certainly don't regret ever being a teacher. I certainly don't regret being a horticulturalist, and I certainly don't regret being involved in the media. In fact, I think all of those, I'm really pleased to have done every one of those things, and the journey's not over yet.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next. Obviously, I guess, especially in the media, you could do that till the day you die.
Yeah,
because you don't. It's not physically taxing, from what I can tell.
Yeah. You've seen the show, have you?
Mentally. Well, when you're describing what did you have to do? 150-second episode. I know there's a lot of work behind there.
Yeah, that's well, I have to say that when we're filming, a week is it's about 100 hours a week.
So it's okay.
It's a lot of work.
Wow. So that's when you're filming just one episode.
We don't film just one. Look, let's say
you film segments and make an episode.
3 days of filming, a day of editing, and then a day where we do I do final edit and everything else. But in between that, there's script writing. There's location organising, because I have to do everything there.
So and get permissions and
do all of that sort of stuff. So if I, and then it's Saturday and Sunday gets brought into Monday, so it's Monday to Sunday.
Well, they're just days.
They're just normal days.
My wife disagrees, but
well, and that's the other thing.
I think Sundays are work.
I think the balance is, it's sort of the balance goes back to hard work, and I know that when I first started Corporate Roses, it was a lot of work. Physically, mentally, financially, it was a hell of a lot of work, and you just don't shirk that.
You just keep moving.
And I suppose, and I go even back further to where my old man, often we go back to where we, our roots and where we came from. When the war finished, and he and two mates jumped on a boat to come out, and happened to come to Australia. So he was a refugee.
Australia just happened to be the country that they came to.
They were the first of the Baltic states groups to land in Adelaide, and so then he started his life. So he had a life of, he didn't get married till he was 40. And so he had a life of, interesting life all the way through. And so I think I look back, as all my brothers do. We look back at our father and we go, he was a tough man. Like there wasn't sort of hugs and kisses and let's go and watch you play football. I don't think he ever saw me play a game of sport,
because he was at work.
He was work, but he came from a European background, and those people who were sort of listening would understand that they may have a grandfather that sort of so he's a bit antisocial, but he catches up with his friends and he has a great time. I think he's angry, but he's. I suppose they bring a lot to them, and Mum was sort of the softer one. She was British and and was a teacher, and so she's still alive. The old man died, I don't know, 93. Nearly 93.
63.
Yeah, 63. No, that was my wife's 62. 63. But Faustus, great name. I love the name Faustus. It's a sort of it's a tough name. So he was 92 when he passed away.
Oh wow!
And so that's about 4 years ago. And
because you said he started late.
And Mum was 13 years younger, so she's sort of now in 85. She still lives in the home that we all lived in.
Living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. I think I think the old man was sort of just buried when she had the kitchen redone, the bathroom redone. We were chiseling tiles, so you got 4 boys. We can go up and look after the garden and the house and everything else for us. So
did your brothers move into a similar?
No, 2 went into the police force. One's a psych nurse, and one works he lives in New Zealand, but he works up in Karratha. So he's a fly in, fly out from New Zealand.
From New Zealand to Karratha.
And we don't know what he does. We think it's a bit like Homer Simpson. We're just thinking, that drinking.
He just presses a button.
Presses buttons. And if he ever hears this, I'm dead.
I was going to say, if he's doing anything he shouldn't be doing, your other 2 brothers probably going to find out about it.
Although one of my brothers who was in the force is now he's garden maintenance. So your answer to the question is yes, somebody did get into horticulture in a slightly varied
the
way.
same way you did, by doing something else
By doing
first,
something
and
else,
then,
yeah.
and then realising, I guess, you can't say a sea change, but a scene change.
Scene change, and and I think it comes back down to hard work, and I suppose being appreciative for the moment, and I think when I look back, the only thing I probably do regret is the time that I couldn't give to my kids, and that's changed a lot in the rose industry. In the rose industry 25 years ago, if you said you were going on a holiday, it wouldn't matter if it's 2 days, another rose grower would go, wow, no, you can afford to go on a holiday, man. Wow, that's pretty good. So it was almost like martyrdom. Everybody had to be a martyr.
Because farmers are like that as well.
Everybody had to go, no, I'm on the property, and I just wanted to do that. And I really encourage anybody who is running their business to give some time to their kids, because I'm lucky because my kids and I, we've got a good relationship. But I know of others where had the time been spent in the early years, they would be reaping some benefits in the latter years, instead of having to sort of mend bridges, build bridges and do stuff like that. So it's not look, every industry has its challenges. Clint, I think from horticulture, it's and our industry, it's often the time that takes you away. If you're living on the property, different things. But
so you were travelling.
I was travelling 60 k's to 120 k's a day to go from the city to Maiponga.
And this is in the 80s?
80s
and early 90s?
Yeah, early 90s.
So it's not like you're listening to podcasts or, you're just listening to the radio, I'm guessing, and with your own thoughts. And
I suppose. Hey, look, that Kiss tape ran,
Yeah. just turn it around.
Yeah, look, I could probably sing, I Was Made for Loving You all the time. Yeah.
Maybe that can be part of the intro. Obviously, with all the work that you've done, you've travelled a lot. Where's your favourite place in the world, I guess outside of Adelaide, that you've I guess either travelled to or done segments, either as a family holiday or as a and can you even isolate it to one?
It's tough, but I'd say Churchill in Canada, and that was swimming with beluga whales, and I think that's probably one of the pinch me moments in my life, where Churchill, if you go onto the travel guides in Churchill, it's on the on Hudson Bay up, it's quite high up. And they all talk about the polar bears. So people go there in winter to see the polar bears. We were there in summer, and I think we sort of realised, but we didn't. We only realised a bit later on that it might be hard to find a polar bear, but it's going to be really easy to see beluga whales, and
because they're
there. But we were in a Zodiac, and that's probably the other thing I loved about it. We were in this Zodiac. There's a camera. There's the audio. There was Trevor Cocker and myself as presenters. We're in this suit. We're in these wetsuits. You jump in the water. The water's about 2 degrees. It was freezing, and as soon as you hit the water. And everything got around, and you started to thaw out a little bit. You were just seeing pods of these white whales, about 3, 4, up to 5 meters long,
as big as the boat.
But they sang. They were singing, and
you could hear it.
You could hear it. It was. They were singing, and they were swimming. You couldn't quite touch them, but within about 2 to 3 meters of you, they'd swim past, because they were brought to the Zodiac. The guy just left the motor running, just the vibration brought them through, and all of these pods and pods and pods of these. There was us in a Zodiac, and another Zodiac out there with a German couple who were taking underwater photography. Nothing else. And I just thought, in the one thing in the world where you'd think that there would be bottomless, like glass bottom boats, and
just oversold tourism.
So this was just, and we were only we're not that far off the shore, but I spent probably the best part of an hour and a half, 2 hours in that water, just where we're filming, but just being there, and it was just
soaking it in,
and to have that experience, it was just brilliant. And the other place I just loved was the west coast of Ireland, and we filmed the Wild Atlantic Way, where we drove down on the west coast, and we just went into some of those fantastic villages, and
And that's still scripted? Or do you kind of script on the run?
No, you sort of script on the run, but you have to do your research, and you do your research, you get to an interview, you still have to write. Sometimes you write the script afterwards, because
for who? The producer?
Well, the producer, because it goes on, because they put it on they put the segment. So there has to be segment on their website. So we're basically writing a précis at the end of it to do that. I mean, and, the number of times we'd be going through these fantastic villages, and around Thailand or Fiji or Korea or somewhere, in a minibus, and all we'd be doing, the whole crew of us, we'd be on our laptops just typing away. I mean, my wife came to.
So you couldn't actually. You're not watching while you're travelling as much,
No, because we know where you were going next, and
you had to get ready.
Judy came to Fiji, and she came to Thailand, and prior to that, it was like, you're going on a holiday. And then when she came, and she realised that you're up at 4 a.m. To type some stuff up. You got to make sure everything's right. Get all get your shirt. Get all your clothing. Then you go to the temple, or you go somewhere else to go to an interview, and then you're back, and you're still typing away, getting stuff done. Not the least sorting out stuff at the nursery at that particular time.
Yeah, so it is a job. It's a nice job, but it's still a job.
It's So look, there are so many places. I mean, Okinawa was interesting. So we met these. I think in terms of longevity, Okinawa, which is part of Japan, but way down below Japan. They've got I think one of the biggest number of people over 100, and they put it down to the quality of the soil and the quality of the food and the bitterness. So we're eating some of these really bitter melons and bitter cucumbers, but we went out to this fields next door to a house, and there was this lady banging away and digging up, and she was planting, and we're just watching her and taking shots, and we found out she was 98, and I'm going, it's ridiculous. I thought she was in her 70s, and she was just, and her sister was 102, and she was in the kitchen, and then they invited us in for a meal, and it was just, I mean, it was surreal.
It's a beautiful country. I was lucky enough I lived in Japan for 12 months when I was younger.
Oh, nice.
And in Nagano, which is, I guess, as pristine as your Okinawa's, because it's not heavily populated. It's still populated because Japan.
So what were we doing over there?
I was an exchange student, so that was 17. So I did year 11.
So what did you get exchange for?
Nothing.
Oh, fair enough.
Bag of beans. It was the exchange program that I went on was a country exchange. Just a general exchange. So I'd go to Japan, and then someone from Brazil might come to Australia. And my parents didn't host anyone, and the people who I stayed with, their daughters had gone to America and Australia years earlier. So it was kind of an exchange, but on a broader scheme. It wasn't one for one or anything. And so I just lived there and went to school. So I just got on a plane on my own as a 16-year-old and
fantastic.
Flew to Japan and lived there for 12 months and then flew home.
Gee, makes you grow up quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, very quickly. Luckily everything was good, and the family I stayed with were relatively well off. My father was a dentist, so there was, because you just go, you don't know who you're going to stay with. So I had people that had gone to like Spain, and their family were just kind of just getting by, or they were okay, but there wasn't. I was, my father we drove around the country, and he took me everywhere and showed me things, and you weren't always going to get that, but then they got a different experience because maybe the people they stayed with had more time to spend with them or whatever. So definitely an unbelievable country, and you can see why these people, while the Japanese live so long, because they have access to clean, healthy food, and unless there's a nuclear issue, but for the majority of the time,
just don't anything off the East Coast.
Then you're all right. So, is there a quote or a mantra that you've continued to come back to or lived by along the way, or?
Well, I suppose in the early days it was bite off more than you can chew, and chew like buggery. I mean, that was that used to be it, but I think now
you're still not doing that.
I am, because I mean, irrespective, I suppose it's about being ambitious without causing harm. I mean, some people can be ambitious, and that they leave a wake of destruction in their back. But if you can be ambitious and without causing harm, and be I mean, it sounds silly. It sounds sort of, but be good to people.
Yeah.
It's an interesting karma that if you're nice to people, they generally are nice back to you.
Yep.
And I've sort of found that's it. And people always like dealing with people they like.
Yeah.
So if you make yourself a more likable person, you will be a much more responsive, and you'll be contacted more, and you'll put yourself out there, but not trying too hard. I think that's probably if there's one thing about me, I tend not to push myself too much.
Yep.
And maybe that's a criticism. I don't know. I mean, in an industry like media, it's often the people that are always pushing themselves that seem to be at the forefront.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fuss me. I just go, look, I know I've got my job to do. I do my job. And I work sort of on a slow and steady and methodical way. And there's no right or wrong. I think it's
so you're more consistent than dynamic.
Yeah, I think that's, and we have our levels of being dynamic, but you can only sustain that for a short period of time. And knowing when to pull back is the most important thing. So really, what I'm doing is I've designed myself a vehicle that is moving in the right direction. So in TV, for example, the outdoors, indoors, and then there are opportunities along the way. MCing, doing the Master Landscapers Association, AGM, AGM awards night, and that's the sort of thing where you do get those other opportunities, and you meet some fantastic things along the way. But if you say that life's a journey, and it depends on what sort of vehicle you're in, will depend on what sort of ride you get. And I'm happy to take a little bit of the bumps here and there, because if you don't feel the bumps, then how the hell do you know where you're going and what you're doing, and what needs fixing, and it's and nothing, it hasn't finished yet. It's just got lots happening.
So how do you see your, I guess, media business in the next decade? Do you consider channels like YouTube and Facebook and Vimeo and I guess the non-traditional networks something that you need to be conscious of, or do you think television's here to stay as far as your programming is concerned? Well,
I think it's interesting. I mean, there is lots of research out to say that there was a talk about the demise of TV. Everyone was saying, look, 5 years ago, well, no one's going to be watching TV in 10 years' time. Sure. And the reality is, it's not. It's actually changing. In fact, the style of TV, I mean, the TV themselves, I mean, they're bringing in 4K. They're talking about 8K. There's a whole lot of other things that are bringing the experience into the lounge rooms. Things like streaming, the Netflix and the Stands and the Foxes and everything else. They're part of it. The free-to-air TV is still there, but again, that's changing. I think that the demographics vary, but there's still a lot of, a surprising high percentage of people under 24 that will view, the majority of their viewing is on a large screen TV. Now, what they're viewing is slightly different, but there's still that free-to-air TV opportunities that will be presenting themselves, and the networks are very much aware of that. Australia and America. In fact, in America last year, television viewing went up from a slight decline. It actually went up. So it's behoving back to the networks to actually put stuff on TV that is viewer friendly.
Well, I guess that you could have seen Netflix do a good job of that by having enough equity to then produce good programs that then you get that kind of spiral where you can get better talent.
Look, and I've got friends who are doing Outback Truckers. I've got a mate who's a producer for Outback Truckers, and he's got just done the Opal one, and there are production companies that are now really targeting the Amazon and Netflix and the Fox and all of those. So producing those programs, which you watch them and you go, wow, look, it's pure entertainment. Really, it's entertainment with the drama thrown in. There's probably not a lot of I suppose changes to it. I mean, it's on a formula. I mean, you look at it, I mean, what are they saying? There's only about 6 good ideas for movies, and it's just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And with TV, I think the more local production that we can put, the better it is. Because if we lose our local production here in SA, then I think we will actually lose a little. We'll lose a lot more than we understand. Because the opportunity to talk about something, and the news is, the news will be the next thing. I mean, Channel 10 News and all of those. Everything starts to sort of get lower and lower. It's produced here, but there's still a lot of stuff that's the regional news is disappearing. So people start to lose a bit of their identity.
I think you see it on morning breakfast TV, like 7 and 9, how they have, I guess, a general show, and then they inject like localized information, like weather. So they will have pre-recorded weather segments or whatever. But
they realise that that's the case because they actually have to appeal to a local audience. Otherwise, people go, "Well, I don't care what the weather is in Queensland today. Like, we're not going there." But there's, I mean, I suppose I look at TV in a sort of a slightly broader perspective and go, for the benefit of the greater good, and we try to put that into the outdoors indoors. And so when we do talk to a potential sponsor, I say it's not an ad. What we want to do is we want to put a human face to your business, or we want you to be able to use some information and give people, whether it's a plumber saying, well, look, this is how you fix a tap up, or this is how you do that, and by association, they're seen as a very knowledgeable and the expert in that. So people,
if they can't do it themselves, then they're likely to reach out to them.
They're going to go reach out to somebody. I mean,
that. I guess part of the reason we produce so much content that we do is so that we become the go-to company in our industry, and people go, well, we trust Waterpro. They've never asked for anything in return. They continue to do this. I mean, this costs money. We have to produce content, and then and we don't have sponsors and we don't charge. So
David's expensive.
He's very expensive. Cool. So, but even the distribution of the content, if we're paying to boost in Facebook or YouTube or whatever, but luckily there's a machine behind this that makes money. So I guess we talked about that at the start. I'd be fearful if I was, I guess, not a one-trick pony, but my core income was derived from television and I had nothing else. Like, obviously you had the Rose business, or even potentially your wife making enough money that that's fine if it doesn't all work. So you don't ever think, you can't see a time where you'll produce a YouTube series and rely on ad revenue from that versus television?
Probably, I would think that my long-term vision is to actually produce more specialised content for perhaps if it's not free to wear, something like a platform.
So it might be Netflix or
like, something. I mean, everybody. I mean, I've got files at home. You come up with an idea and you write it down, and then you expand on it, and then you put a pitch. And I've got probably 3 potential programs that not necessarily have me in front of the camera,
but you could be the owner producer.
Exactly. And I think that's it. I mean, there are some that which I could be in front of the camera, and that's
because they've got a horticultural arm.
No, not necessarily,
or because of your skill set.
Because with the skill set you develop. So I mean, I'm probably moving more away from being known as a gardener, but more as a presenter in terms
of television presenter,
TV presenter. So that gives you a little more scope. But so having said that, there are some things where you might say, well, look, there's a garden element to a story, but it's a matter of always thinking. And I mean, your brain never switches off. Certainly in our industry, and in anyone's industry, but it's the creativity that I think when I grew roses. When I put a stick in the ground, it was often 18 months or 2 years before I could dig that stick up after we budded it and everything else. And now I can do stuff in 2 seconds or 2 minutes or 2 hours and produce, get something.
Can you imagine me trying to be a grower? I feel like, can we feed these things anything that'll have them ready in like a month? Patience is something that I've had.
You can just sell baby plants. Like these are really, really, really small, and some of them may not have any roots.
Great marketing. Just like they're babies. They're like those like baby pigs. The miniature pigs, they're just miniature plants. They're all the fashion.
So,
don't water it.
I mean, I'm growing them in a nursery. I mean, nurseries have babies. This is it.
This is where they come from. Is there anything that you're working on at the moment that you want to talk about? Obviously, there's an audience of, well, hopefully thousands of this one, but are there any shows? It's at the moment. It's inside, outside,
outdoors, indoors.
Outdoors, indoors. Oh, I'm such an asshole.
No,
Sorry.
I tell you what. No, but it's interesting because we mulled over that name. I mean, I had that name picked out 12 months before we even approached Nine.
Yeah.
Because I could see where. I mean, I think everything evolves, and if you can see, like in any business, if you see where your business is going, and you can see it 2 years ahead of the curve, then you go, right, well, now I can be in a better position. So I could see where In the Garden was going, and it was moving toward a lifestyle show. We can't have In the Garden.
No.
I mean, it doesn't make sense as a lifestyle program. So we had, I had this board of names, and people would come around and would go, what about these names? And Outdoors Indoors was up near the top 2 or 3, and it just kept sitting up there, and then you do your googling, you check out what you can use. Somebody's already used that .com.au. Oh right, well forget that one. But we.tv. But you just have to be careful about associations.
Any potential infringements on trademarks. Even if they're not. If they're not likely to be, you just want to try and have a clean sheet, really.
Yeah, and so we just went. I mean, it could have been indoors, outdoors. It could have been outside, inside, and inside, outside. So there was a whole lot of things, and we just you stick to the name, and you go, well, outdoors, indoors, and people get the name mixed up. And look, it's the same. It's the same with the surname. People, it's Syrus, but people say Cyrus.
We talked about that before, actually, because I did say Cyrus, and he's like, it's not Cyrus, it's Syrus, and I was like, I will be the judge of that, DK.
And so forever. Actually, sorry, Clint, it's actually Kim Syrus now. Yeah, I didn't realise I was actually going. I was being renamed. Thanks, mate.
No,
appreciate
sorry.
that. Wow.
The name is the most important word in your English language, so it's important that we get it right. But I'm like, I'm sure it's spelled differently to that, DK, but it's your name, so
thanks.
We'll go
Thank
with Syrus.
Thank you.
Shut up, DK.
Really appreciate that.
So that's the only program that you've got running at the moment?
At the moment,
and realistically, could you produce 2 programs at once? It just wouldn't be possible for you.
No, because unless I had another production crew, and we're toying around with a few other things, but at the moment, it's going to be a 15-week series. We'll start airing on the 3rd of June.
So nothing's live yet?
No, we haven't. I'll start filming in probably around about mid-March.
You have to bankroll that and then wait, effectively.
Well, what we do is we get the sponsorship up and rolling. But I don't start paying for anything until we actually start filming. So right now, it's I spend this time going through the sponsors, chatting to people, and locking in certain. So we'll do 15 weeks. This 15-week series, and depending on what else happens, there's opportunities for next year. So we may expand out to a 20-week series next year. So it's just
how it rolls.
How it rolls. Ideally, if we could be running something else at the same time, it would be great. And occasionally, and this is what sometimes happens in this industry, somebody taps you on the shoulder and goes, "Would you be a presenter on this program?" Have nothing, no association.
You walk in,
you do the presenting,
present, out,
and out.
Which obviously is nice from a time point of view, but it also helps grow your face, the awareness of Kim in the media market further.
Well, Virginia Nursery did a good job. We've been doing the ads for Virginia Nursery for the last 4 years. I think they've had me as their celebrity gardener on the ads, and Chad out through there. That was good. You go out there, you do the job. You stand in front of the camera, you knock it over, and after 3 hours of filming around the place, they can put together 5 ads.
They got all this content, and then you don't have to produce it or anything. It's just done.
No,
that sounds like more my style. Hey, just get up, talk, and leave.
But there's a new ad on TV at the moment called Cota Travel Insurance, and that was my first TV ad that I produced. So we actually did the filming, editing, and I did the voiceover for it.
Okay,
we had
so they'll give you a budget, or you'll give them a price.
We'll give a quote. Yep. We have a sort of relationship. They were on Outdoors Indoors, and caught up with their CEO for their travel insurance.
We're getting a lot of good plugs in this podcast.
The Cota Travel Insurance.
Not at all planned.
No, nothing planned at all. Actually, can I just? I'll turn the back. There'll be something else on there.
All down there.
Yeah,
like a V8 supercar driver.
I'll just rip the sleeve off, and there's something else on there.
That'd be so funny. All these brands down your arm.
But he just just said, look, they were looking at doing an ad, and they weren't sure. And I said, oh yeah. He goes, do you
You'd not done one before?
No. He said, do you tell TVCs, television commercials? I went, well, not at this stage, but let me know. So I just gave them a bit of a how I saw how that would go, and they showed it to the board, and their board was really pleased with it. Then we filmed it, and it's got got a lot of traction.
My television consumption is very low, that's I guess heavily because of what we're trying to achieve and the amount of time that I don't have to watch TV.
Yeah.
But it's when you mentioned before that people under 24, which is not quite me, are watching. No, was it? They're watching on screen, but they're not necessarily TV.
Not necessarily the TV content.
Yeah.
And
so
that's,
if I'm home and my wife's not there, I'll have YouTube. On, and that's it. Even my kids, my son's 5, my oldest who's 5 watches YouTube over anything else. So I'm just interested to see. I was interested on your perspective of that, and is there a generation of garden/lifestyle programming coming up that?
I think probably the biggest thing coming up in any of the media is in content. I mean, we go back to in the early stage of James Bond. I think Daniel Craig's first movie. There was 150 product placements or something ridiculous
Heineken
about
Heineken,
the whole
Aston
lot.
Martin,
and it was sort of brought up. It didn't detract from the movie at all, but what it was an obvious thing. What we're finding more and more is that people are actually, I mentioned about television commercials, people are either taping programs and watching afterwards. So that's actually a big thing starting, even off free to wear. And I think there's about 14 to 15%, or maybe even up to 17% now, of free-to-air TV that's actually not watched at the time, but it's watched later on, and that's only going to increase. But because of that, people are actually speeding through the ads. You can get recorders that will just skip the ads. They'll just cut them out completely. Well,
that's not including the people that then also are on their phone while the ad's on and aren't watching
or mute it. So I mean, that mute button gets hit. So therefore, the value of a TVC is starting to, it's getting hard. So you've really got to do something special for that, or with local content or with TV, you actually have in content. So what we do is we classify ourselves as in content TV, and so people can get information not in an ad, but they can get that detail. It could be on a product, it could be, whatever it is, a hat. So we'll look, we do this trim around the edge, and when you're talking to somebody who's actually interested and shows what they can do, people are interested too. That's probably one of the things at the moment is, and that's a selling point for any local TV or any TV where you can get away with talking about it and doing it in blocks, because the other thing too is you've got to be careful about how long you go with with visuals, because people's attention span tends to wane a bit too.
So that's usually what, 2 or 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, look, we run 2 different styles, and we tend to run what we classify as a feature story. That could be about 3.5 minutes, can bump up to 4, and that's sort of about right. And then we call things called vignettes, which might be a minute and a half, 2 minutes, where you get 1 or 2 points across in a it could be just a handy hints type thing. So you get that in and you can bundle it up, and it becomes sort of really punchy. How to fold a fitted sheet, for example. Got to be careful how you say that.
Not on this podcast.
Not on this podcast. Of all the podcasts, I actually got it right. Wow, this is good. Didn't hit the editing floor, that one. Just show people how to do it, something really quickly, and then it might have a website to head to for more information.
And then that website might have sheets for sale.
Sheet for sale, yeah, exactly. There's a whole range of ways of doing it, and being smart about it, and knowing that your frequency, like this podcast, the more you make, the more people get used to listening.
That's definitely my focus for this year is more. I think we didn't do enough last year.
So if you're doing, people will say, look, we want to do one story, and that's great because they want to use that for a specific purpose. I go, that's good. If your budget can stretch it, it's always good. I mean, not just saying for us, but it's good to have things on a frequent basis. So whether they go, look, we'll do 1 feature story and we'll do 3 vignettes, rather than say do 2 feature stories. So for basically the same price, I can get you one for 4 weeks as opposed to 2 weeks.
And then for that 1 week that someone missed, or that frequency of that you start to build trust. I mean, I don't know, I was at a seminar last year, and they mentioned some figure that brand exposure numbers are up near 17 or 18 times that you need to see a logo before you become comfortable or familiar with buying from that brand. It's just getting worse and worse and worse because there's logos everywhere and brands everywhere. And
well, the choice is, and that's probably why free-to-air television still has a massive advantage in that when you turn a TV on, you're not blinded by 1,000 million, different options. You've got your channels, and in some ways, there's a certain comfort when people do turn on free to air TV, because they go, that's channel 2, and they've got their channels.
Like
that's channel 2.
Choice anxiety almost.
Yeah. I mean, how many times? I mean, I remember going to the States about 25 years ago and sat in a hotel room, and I think there was 300 channels.
And you just go through the whole lot.
And then I was watching something. I thought that's really good. No, I didn't take down the number.
No.
And then I went, oh, great. So probably as I flicked past, it was the ad.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
So it's. Yeah, it's a changing shape of the media, that particular part of the media.
Yep.
But it's a slow burn. And as things change,
you don't have a concern about television in your career, in what's in the next 20, 30, 40 years.
No, I think so. No, look, I mean, if we do stuff, it'll be maybe targeted to more of if we it'd be great to do some stuff on the free to air, and we'll certainly love the fact that we can do stuff on on local TV, and that gets replayed nationally on 9 Life, and it's available on Catch Up, and
so it's on the internet as well.
It's on the internet, and it's great when you get an email from somebody, or you get a message coming through saying, hey, we saw with a question about a program, and you're going, wow, that's 2 years old. And they often replay. In the Garden gets replayed on a regular basis, and Outdoors Indoors the same.
If someone needs to get in touch with you, are you pretty responsive?
It's just straight Kim at kimsyrus.com.au.
Yep.
That's KIM.
And that goes straight to you?
KIMSYRUS.com.au. And I think that's the whole thing, is that I've never been precious, and I suppose the thing is I've never been controversial enough to go, I'm going to get a wacko chasing me down.
Yeah.
But
no Britney Spears moments?
Well, no. So
there's still some time for that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, look, the career's still young.
That's it.
No problems at all.
Your head.
Yeah.
Okay. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, we'll link up the details.
Yep.
In the podcast. In the, you know what I'm talking about. I haven't eaten much today. And if anyone's got any shows to pitch to you, just email them to you.
Look, if people have queries about, and they have any questions about, look, I'm thinking about doing something, I'm more than happy to talk about that. That's because good. It's the same in our rose industry. We had some people come in, and they weren't sure how to pitch their pricing and do stuff like that, and you just bring. If you can't give information, there's something wrong.
I think it's important. I think it's really important to be able to share what you've learned to maybe reduce someone's learning. I mean, people will still need to go out and make their own mistakes, and that's just the reality of us as human beings. But if you can shorten their learning curve by 10% or 20% by maybe giving them 1 or 2 little tips, I think that's great. So, thank you so much for coming in,
Clint. Great pleasure. And thanks for the water, mate.
That's all right.
Do I owe you money for this?
No, just leave the bottle. We just get the 10 cents back.
Wow. Okay.